Hi, it's Kathy Habis with Safewise.com. I'm a family safety expert and I know a lot about kids' smartwatches. And today I want to tell you a little bit about geofencing and some things that you need to know before you rely on this technology to keep your kids safe. First, let's talk about what geofencing is and how it's supposed to work. Geofencing is a virtual boundary, so it uses GPS location to basically plot out a circle around your house or another building like your child's school. And when a child wears a GPS tracker and that tracker exits the boundary line, then parents are supposed to get a notification. Parents are also supposed to get a notification when the child re-enters the boundary line, such as when they are coming home. So that is how geofencing is supposed to work. So if you're a parent and you're thinking, that's great, I can draw a line right around my house and I'll know exactly when my child leaves my house, tries to go to the neighbor's house to play with their friend, then that is where you are wrong. That is not how geofencing ends up working in practicality, especially not with kids' smartwatches. In reality, there is a rather large minimum boundary that you have to deal with. So with some kids' smartwatches, the minimum boundary is like 700 feet in diameter. That's a huge circle. That's like, I think when I was testing it in my neighborhood, it was like a block and a half. Kids' smartwatches have those large boundaries because the companies are trying to reduce false alarms. GPS tracking is only accurate to about 16 feet, which means you're not guaranteed to always get a precise location. And I live in an area where houses are like 5 feet away from each other. So 16 feet means that I might get a notification saying my child is at the neighbor's house or across the street, even when they are just in the next room in the house. So if I were to set up a geofence that was really, really small and just the boundary of my property, I would be getting false alarms left and right. I also take issue with the fact that in kids' smartwatches, the geofence boundaries are always circles. And this might seem like a really minor nitpick, but when there's a minimum boundary of like 700 feet, and I want my house to be at the center of it so that I know my child goes 700 feet any direction. 700 feet to the east, where I live, is going to put them in the middle of a river. And I definitely want a notification before my child gets anywhere near that river. But if I have to adjust the boundary further west to accommodate for that, that means that my child can get further away to the west before I'll get a notification. So it's kind of between a rock and a hard place and trying to figure out what boundaries you want to set when all you have to deal with is a circle. And as far as I know, no kid's smartwatch lets you draw custom boundaries using lines, but I have seen that in pet GPS trackers, so that I know that it is possible. The next issue I have with geofencing is how some kids' smartwatch companies set up their notifications. So remember, when we talk about how this is supposed to work, when your child exits the boundary, you're supposed to get a notification, an instant notification. I believe most parents would agree with me on that. But some kids' smartwatches do not give you instant notifications. They tie in the notifications into the normal location update schedule, which completely defeats the purpose of geofencing and getting those immediate alerts. What does this mean for you as a parent and for your children? Well, I think that if your child has a serious elopement risk where they could really endanger themselves by getting away from home even a little bit, this is not reliable enough or strong enough technology to keep your kids safe. I think that you need to use door chimes and, instant notifications that the whole house hears instead of relying on geofencing in a kid's smartwatch. I think that geofencing in a kid's smartwatch can be a layer, a tool in the toolbox that you use to keep your kids safe in those kind of situations. But this is not what I would solely rely on. There's just too many things that could go wrong in you getting the notifications and in the accuracy of it. Now, for just kind of everyday, just making sure your kid is on schedule, leaving school at the right time, going to their friend's house, the right friend's house, or not making any detours on their way, to the park, then yeah, I think this is a nifty tool, but you've got to be prepared for the false alarms, and you just have to know that this is not a perfect technology. My recommendation for a kid's smartwatch that does geofencing really well is the Bark Watch, and the runners-up are the Gizmo Watch and the Gab Watch. Bark Watch gave instant notifications when I left the boundary during testing, and I had to leave the boundary line by about 75 feet before Gizmo and Gab gave notifications, so slight delays. And you will get false alarms on any of these watches. There's just no getting around it. I would love to hear from you about your experiences with geofencing. Do you agree with my criticisms, or am I being overly harsh? Does geofencing work well to keep your kids safe, or do you also have some issues with it? Let me know in the comments below, and let me know what your experience has been with specific kids' smartwatches so we can help other parents make good decisions. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.